Someone asked for more LARP horror stories in this sub, so here is one of mine. This was the final session of the year, the culmination of the whole summer. Final battles, epic stakes, you name it. We even had over 10 extra animators that played the invading drow army. I sucked. And I'm killed very early on. And following the rules, I stay put on the ground for X amount of time until I regain consciousness or someone heals me. And I am completely away from the main attraction of the event. I am there, on the ground, and only listening to the final battle as I wait and hope someone sees me in time to get back there and assist to the final. Nobody ever found me, and I waited until the time was up, also known as when everything was over and everyone left the fight site. I to this day regret not having bent the rules and simply walked in view of the action that was 10 years ago. Lesson to every LARPer. If it's not fun, ask yourself if you really should be doing what you're doing. You might just end up with decade-old regrets. While I do respect the fact that the OP honored the rules of the game and laid dutifully on the ground as the rules intended, I will say if the rules are preventing you from participating in the event that you, I assume, prepped very hard for, I think I agree that the rules can be bent at least to a slight degree. Besides, what are they gonna do? Kill you in real life? Wait, hey, hold on. That was a hypothetical. So this is pretty softcore compared to most horror on here, but it is something that has irritated me for a few sessions now. Apologies for formatting issues or spelling errors, I'm on mobile. My Monday group recently started a new campaign, which is a sequel to the one we just finished. The group consisted of the original group, plus a new player that the DM knows, who is the focus of the story. We have met her in person before, and I'd like to preface with this. She's a lovely person. Very bubbly and sweet, but for the life of me, I cannot stand playing D&D with her sometimes. I was apprehensive from the beginning, knowing she was joining, but I chalked it up to me being a well-known severe introvert, the kind that needs a week to recover from one day of social stuff, especially with very high-energy people. Session 0 was fine, however, and she seemed somewhat inexperienced, but otherwise fine. And inexperience is no issue. Our group is a mix of very avid players, myself, my partner, and the DM, and more casual players. The cast of the party are DM, Goliath Cleric, myself, Elven Druid, the player in question, Goblin Ranger, my partner, Human Wizard, Kobold Sorcerer, and a Gnome Rogue. It was when we began the actual campaign that things began to bother me. She spoke almost non-stop, and I mean that. No matter what it was, she spoke on the matter, and barely anyone could get a word in edgewise. I was sick one session and couldn't play, but I lived with my partner and could somewhat hear the game going in his office room, and she was all I could hear for a good 90% of it. She also rolled for pretty much everything, regardless of whether it would be in character to do so for her. For example, my cleric would likely want to roll medicine checks to make sure people were okay, but he wouldn't really roll arcana checks to look at arcane relics, since it isn't something he has an interest in. But no big deal, really, it's just mildly annoying. She does, however, also constantly ask the DM if she could use random skills to do things totally unrelated to them. She was proficient in these skills, so it makes sense. She wants to play to her strengths, but that's not really how rolling works. Plus, it was every single roll, trying to use perception or nature for just about everything imaginable and nagging the DM to let her do so. He did not. Overall, she played her character in that good old alignment, chaotic, stupid. She does what she wants, regardless of the party, and wants control over every situation. Her trope is that she needs to be high or she gets aggressive, something that somewhat triggers me for reasons I won't get into, but not enough that I told her to stop. And she brought this up constantly. She uses it as an excuse to do random, aggressive things because she hasn't gotten enough of a high recently. Then there's combat. She talks during other people's turns, talking over them specifically. She did this to my partner several times, not to mention we have gotten into several combats simply due to her wanting to do something chaotic stupid. For example, we came across a frog monster that was carrying an unconscious civilian in its claws. They were explicitly described as being alive but unconscious. Enter the druid. I want to cast Moonbeam. To which I immediately jump in and say, please don't kill the civilians. Don't cast that spell. But as the title suggests, she did it anyway. This resulted in the civilians being dead, and the frog monster walking away with barely a scratch on it. The reason I so adamantly asked her not to do this was because it isn't the first time civilians have died because of her actions. Admittedly, this was something done by another player firsthand, but was the result of something the druid did initially. Her approach to most scenarios like this are, well, they're probably done for anyway, which I have tried to state in character is simply not true, or at least we do not know that for certain. The thing that bothers me about this is that the attitude removes autonomy from the other players. Regardless of what we want to do or what we discuss, it could be for nothing because the druid wants to cast Moonbeam. I felt quite bad in the last session as in character I basically pointed out that we need to stop doing this sort of thing. This led to the other party members somewhat turning their gaze to the druid, and she was a little ostracized. Not my intention, I simply wanted to reduce the collateral damage we were causing since my cleric is meant to be a good, helpful person. She did somewhat separate herself too, as when we were heading back to some docks to speak to an NPC, we came across a crowd. Most of us decided to go check out what the commotion was about. She chose to sit in a tree and get high. The rest of us went to investigate and she remained in the tree, but seemed somewhat annoyed that she was not involved in what we were doing and had no control of the situation despite the fact she had actively taken herself out of it. At the end of the session, most of us decided to go find an inn to rest at. She wanted to go drinking with some dwarves. The DM at this point told her he was not going to run a totally separate session for her to drink with dwarves away from everyone else. I am hoping that she calms down since she seems new to this. Perhaps she's just excited and doesn't know how to rein it in. This is my hope, but otherwise, this just makes me dread going to a game that I absolutely love otherwise. Some of the behavior is getting better, so we'll see. Overall, it isn't that bad compared to some things I've read and other people I've played with, but it's just very frustrating. TLDR, new player is typically chaotic stupid and makes an otherwise enjoyable game very frustrating for the rest of us. It's important to remember that foolishness and malice are not always things that go hand in hand. It's very likely that this is just a new player, like the OP said, who doesn't really know how to play the game with the group. Somebody who's bad at coordinating with their team. And yeah, that is definitely a problem when you're playing a group game like Dungeons and Dragons. Now, it's not like your characters always need to love each other and be buddy-buddy. There are going to be character conflicts. However, character conflict should not result in real-world frustration. I remember Ford and Caleb from Critical Role Campaign 2 were feuding a lot during the early episodes, but it's not like there were bad feelings between Liam or Travis. It was clearly an in-character thing. However, here, we're not seeing in-character, we're seeing out-of-character frustration with the druid's actions. Reasonably so, considering that their chaotic stupid actions are resulting in a more difficult game for everybody, I'm assuming including the DM. Because this person is new, they may not even realize that what they're doing is a mistake. They may just view all the criticism as in character. Take it out of character. Go to this person and explain to them what you would like to see improved. Maybe get the DM's help on this. Don't, gang up on them because that's going to make somebody a little bit defensive, but just giving a respectful amount of out of character critique can help to curtail this issue. At least I hope. In the late 90s, I moved to Florida to go to school. I was on my own there for the first time and very far from home. I left my family, friends, and a regular group of gamers, and it didn't take long for homesickness to hit me. There were a few spots nearby that held a public in-store gaming group, but the emphasis was on D&D, and I was very much going through a post-D&D hipster phase. My group at home was neck-deep in World of Darkness, and as popular as the setting was, in spite of Florida's innate nihilism and bleak atmosphere, in-store gaming had yet to embrace it. But I lucked out one day before class when I met a girl around my age who stopped for a smoke and asked me about my shirt, a tee bearing a well-known Vampire the Masquerade image. You know the one. It's one of Tim Bradstreet's illustrations, the one based on a photo of Linda Blair. So like, you're a kindred or are you a poser, she asked. Weird way to ask me if I played, but this was not the first time I dealt with socially undercooked gamers. This was the before time when 90% of the people on the spectrum were undiagnosed and treated like zero charisma weirdos. So I navigated the awkward small talk period and then demonstrated adequate knowledge of the game to get an invitation to her table. End of the week, game started at dusk. How I was expected to measure, that was anybody's guess, but when I did turn up to the game, I was somehow on time while the other players were late. I'd rolled up a Ravnos vampire, spent some time writing a backstory, and in spite of the jitters, I was excited to play. Upon arriving, however, it occurred to me that I may have made a mistake. The house, first of all. It was a squalid dump. It looked like a haunted house on the outside, and I wasn't sure if I had the right place because it looked condemned. Inside, well, it wasn't much better, with cockroaches everywhere. The girl answered the door and before saying hello, gave me a hard time for not dressing up. I hadn't gotten the memo. I was, however, shocked by her outfit. A sheer slip with nothing underneath. Her boyfriend, a gothic-flavored riff on The Simpsons comic book guy, no less than 15 years her senior, also gave me hell about my lack of costuming, in spite of his regular street clothes. It turned out that he was the storyteller, so it didn't matter for him. He reeked profoundly of dirty laundry and body odor and offered me wine in a visibly dirty glass. I declined. The other players arrived. They all looked like extras from Hackers. Introductions were done, and the game began. There were 3 others. One was an aloof Toreador, who hardly spoke, and the other 2 were Bruja badasses. One of them played their character like a volatile maniac, Wolverine with a headache. He had one of those extremely elaborate daggers they used to play with in nerd stores, next to pewter demon rings, the expensive bongs. He used it like a prop, and that's when I noticed that the tabletop had dozens of gouges on it. The other Bruja was the in-game love interest of the girl who played an insufferable lunatic Malkavian that was an even more hypersexual version of Harley Quinn. She sat in her in-game boyfriend's lap IRL, and the 2 of them frequently engaged in extremely inappropriate sexual behavior at the table, while her real boyfriend was watching. It felt like being at the dinner table at the end of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I should have left sooner than I did, but I felt trapped and intimidated by these kind of crazy people, so I stuck it out. That is, until the guy with the knife literally threw himself over the table at me. He'd been menacing me all game, in character, of course, and stabbed the knife dramatically into the tabletop several times when we got into an argument over Carmilla politics, and he seized the moment to come at me, knocking everything over, books, pencils, drinks, everything went everywhere, and he pressed the blade to my throat. I've seen stories escalate in many different ways, but running at someone with a knife is brand new. He did this lightly, mind you, but still, what the hell, dude? No one did anything. They just watched it happen, and I was so shocked that I simply sat there and let him get his threats out. When he collected himself and sat back down, I promptly gathered my stuff and left without a word. The girl, practically nude, followed me out to the driveway asking what the problem was. I turned, gave her the hardest look I'd ever given anyone, and drove home. I saw her around school, but we never spoke again. It was years before I played another role-playing game. Look, as long as these people are having fun in the comfort and privacy of their own home, there's nothing wrong with that. But the second they start inviting people without properly explaining what they're trying to do, that's when they open themselves up for a little bit of judgment, because holy hell, that was insane. I clarify a lot of stuff before starting my game because I understand that not everything I do is typical of every D&D group, and that's okay. Everyone plays different. But if you have this many, let's say, eccentricities in your game, you damn well better tell someone before randomly inviting them. Though I'm gonna be honest, with the girl's initial pitch of basically asking the guy a ton of questions to figure out if he's a poser or not, I mean, I would be very hesitant to accept the invitation. That kind of thing just annoys the hell out of me. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, no matter how animated your game is, holding a knife to someone's throat, that's, yeah, that's a bit much. If it's sharp enough to pierce the table, it's sharp enough to hurt somebody, and that means you shouldn't be swinging it around like a toy. Bad idea. But I don't think I need to say that, because you guys watch Crispy's Tavern, and that makes you guys super smart. As a bit of context, this is an update to our story about the guy who asked out a girl 3 times and then nuked his D&D game by not allowing her to even roll dice and calling all women liars. The first video is in the cards, but now eyes up, we've got our part 2. Hey everyone, I said I would be back with an update after my next session, so here I am. Sorry for any spelling or grammar mistakes. Grammar has never been my strong suit, and I have a killer headache at the moment, but I figured I would still keep my word to keep you all updated. I realized I didn't put some background info in, trying to stay anonymous and all, but I have known DM and 2 of the guys since freshman year of high school, when they were both seniors, and the DM had sometimes been a nice guy, but he had never been this much like an incel or a neckbeard, so this behavior was kind of surprising to us, which is why I think they only spoke up once, and were kind of confused about it after that. Also, I know my last post I was saying I wouldn't leave the game, but a lot of you got through to me. All the advice made me realize that, even though he is a phenomenal storyteller and world builder who can craft these beautifully articulate and engaging worlds and NPCs, even the best stories aren't worth putting up with being mistreated. I'll be honest, because of some issues in my past, I tend to not recognize that I don't have to put up with everyone's crap, and I am a allowed to stand up for myself and leave bad situations, so I really did appreciate everyone helping me to realize this was one of those situations to stand my ground and not back down at all. But anyway, on to the actual update on what happened. How it all went down yesterday was not at all what I expected to happen, to be honest. I had shown all the other guys I played with the messages that DM had sent me. I was clear with them that this was not acceptable, and that either they supported me and got DM to straighten his act up, or I was leaving. I also made it clear that I had nothing against them, that I really liked gaming with them and would be happy to continue playing with them under a different DM if I had to leave, and that we would still be able to be friends outside the game. All of them were appalled at how he had been acting, and the messages seemed to be the final straw that broke the camel's back. After showing them all the messages, they said they had to talk about some stuff and would get back to me before the next session, but most were clear that they were on my side in this matter. One of the guys got back to me the day before the session and said they were all behind me 100%, and that they had been calling the DM out the past 2 weeks since the last session. I guess they were demanding he shape up and explain where this mindset came from and why he was acting like such an ass. Well, I decided that since I had support from the rest of the group, I would go back for this session, but if he made a single comment, I was leaving then and there, just walking out and being done with all of it. When I got to the place we were all meeting, DM asked us to sit down, and he sounded really uncomfortable and wouldn't look anyone in the eye. He said he wanted to talk to us, but we had to sit down first. Well, he went on to tell us about his past 3 girlfriends, that one had dated him for 2 months before saying she was a lesbian and leaving, that the second one cheated on him with someone from one of his classes, and the third one, which he says was the breaking point for him, asked to join a game he was DMing for at college, and ended up hitting it off with one of the guys there, and they broke up. He actually showed us screenshots of the conversation they had leading up and after each breakup, and honestly, I can see why the guy was pretty crushed by it all, and it sucks big time to be cheated on. We did know he had been in those relationships, and I knew that the one had came out, and that the second one had cheated on him, but no one knew about the third relationship falling apart. He never wanted to talk about it with anyone, and after each relationship he went through the stages of mourning the relationship, and we did what we could to support him, but he always seemed to bounce back, and if anyone tried to talk to him about it, he was very convincing in telling us that he had been sad for long enough now, and he was doing better and was moving on. So none of us really knew the full story of everything that went down, or how it had really affected him. I was honest with him that I was really sorry he had been through that, and I did empathize with how he was feeling and how he was hurt, but none of that was an excuse for how he had been treating me or how he had been speaking, that his behavior was still unacceptable and incredibly cruel and hurtful, and it made me feel unsafe to be around him. The other guys of the group backed me up by saying, as crappy as his situation was, it did not excuse or forgive the way he had been acting. They were clearly behind me, which I'll admit, that was a huge relief. DM asked what he had to do to get us to stay, and one of the guys said the main issue would be earning my trust back, and that it was up to me to decide what that meant. And that aside from that, the guys had lost trust in DM and his ability to be fair to all the players at the table, and that he would have to earn back that trust as well as their respect for him as a friend. DM then told me that he had known he was wrong to act and speak like that, and that he had been angry and spiteful because of his past experiences, and because he was hurt when I turned him down each time he asked me out between his past relationships and after his last girlfriend broke up with him. He said he was taking his anger out on me and venting because it was easy to blame me for it. I'll admit, I had fully expected him to go nuclear and start yelling or something when I showed up for the session. I had fully prepared to take all your advice and leave. I was not prepared for this. We didn't end up having a session that night. DM said he would leave for now and let me think on if/how he could get our trust back. So DM left, and the other guys and I honestly don't know what to do about it. We all had a lot to take in, but we still wanted to hang out like we planned for the day, so the rest of the guys and I ordered some Panda Express, watched some movies, and played some board games before parting ways. I haven't talked to them today, and they haven't tried to message me. They all probably just felt as confused and lost as I do right now. So I guess that's it for the update for now. I don't really know if I'll continue playing in the game or not. I don't know what to tell DM for how he can earn my trust and the trust of the other players back. I don't even know if he can earn that trust back with me. I have a lot to think about for now. I am considering telling him that therapy is a good first step in getting my trust back. He has always had some really bad anger issues and some personal things. I believe therapy could really help him work through this with all this new stuff. My belief that he could use a good therapist is even stronger now, honestly. He has always been kind of put off by the idea of therapy, though, and I remember he was very clear. He thought it was just dumb when I got therapy back during my senior year for some traumas I had been through, but I don't know, maybe this whole situation could be what finally makes him see he can't do it on his own. He already seems to be realizing that his coping methods are only going to lead him to losing several of his friendships. Sorry if it isn't the explosive yelling match ending with one of us storming out of the room in the dramatic climax of the evening like some of you in the comments were saying you wanted to hear about. I honestly kind of expected to be giving that kind of update, but now here we are. I'll keep you all posted still. We all are planning to meet up at the scheduled time in 2 weeks when the next session would be, so the guys and I have 2 weeks now to think and figure things out. Well, this is a welcome twist if the guy is being genuine and wants to improve. That's something that we don't see often enough, even though, I will admit, the guy still does give me a lot of red flag warning signs, and I am still cautious, of course, as a viewer of the situation. However, my perspective is colored by my own experiences, and yeah, I am very hesitant to accept apologies that come packaged with, that happened because of this thing in my past. It's just something that's always turned me off for some reasons I'm not going to get into, but look, point is that is me. That is my experiences, and my experiences should not dictate how OP responds to this situation. I will say that you are not personally responsible for other people's personal problems. If this guy has had 3 terrible relationships and breakups, then that genuinely really sucks. I'm glad the OP is sympathetic toward the situation. However, the OP is not this guy's therapist. The OP is not forced to be part of this guy's journey to improvement. Just because you understand why somebody does something doesn't mean that you now need to be okay with them being around. If they still make you uncomfortable, then it's genuinely okay to walk away and wish them the best in their road of recovery. At the end here, I do want to say that I do hope that guy in this story does recover and does change their ways and get out of this incel trap that they have found themselves in. But only time will tell. Danger, danger, danger. This was several years ago, so it's slightly hazy. Found a game on Roll20, not labeled as 18+. Good, thought past me, who was uncomfortable with the idea of role-playing 18+ things. This is before I realized that most are labeled that way for violence, tone, or language. I get in, make a character who, as is important to the story, is female, show up on time for the first session, and hop into voice chat. We greet each other. There is 4 of us players and the DM, of which I'll name, I don't remember their real names anyway, been too long, Joe, Robert, Lilia, me, and the Dungeon Master. 2 male characters and 2 female. The player of the other female character is Lilia, and she introduces that she is in fact only 15 in real life, and hopes it will not be an issue. Same with her being the only girl at the table. A general no problem is given by all the players. I do not recall if the DM commented on it or not, but here's where things get weird. The DM sets the scene, and we are all in the tavern just hanging out, and a villager runs in and is screaming about orcs on the edge of town attacking people. The DM tells us that we rush to see what we can do, leaving all our equipment behind. Wait, what? The DM sighs and explains that given we are just casually hanging out, we would not be wearing our armor sets and would not have time to don them before arriving at the scene. A little bit of disagreement pops out of that bit, but at this point, one of the other players, I believe it was Joe, invites us all to a private chat and the DM does not know about it. Joe says that perhaps the DM is just trying to set the scene, that we might not have been wearing all of our gear, and maybe we should just go along with it and see what happens. So we concede the armor points, but argue that most of us would probably at least grab a weapon, seeing as we all heard that orcs are attacking. But the DM starts pushing on this too, claiming we would have just left immediately, and even us as players start to point out that we could have easily just had a sword strapped on or a knife concealed somewhere, but he just moves on to us arriving. At this point, even merciful Joe admits he felt like it didn't make sense for any of our characters to leave without at least arming themselves. As we arrive, orcs are there in plenty, and we're told to roll initiative as we are being overrun. We are confused as to why we would be engaging unarmed, but that would soon become clear as the DM rolled for about 11 orcs individually. Several are going before we have a chance to do anything. The DM tells us as he rolls some checks that the first orc went about grappling my character successfully. That's not good. But then we hit the horror part of the story. As a second orc comes over, the DM elaborates that the orc rips off your shirt, exposing your... Oh. Awesome. It's one of those stories. Again. The DM then starts going into detail, making very clear that the orcs are horny and ready to, well, do things to my character. After which, I think it was Robert's turn, but there's a bewildered silence. Then Lilia speaks up. This is a bit uncomfortable. After that, us players start to talk about, wait, is this why you don't want us with our equipment? This is not cool. Is this an 18 plus game? I don't recall it being labeled that way. Oh, also DM, Lilia is only 15. You probably shouldn't introduce that kind of thing into this game then. Those are at least some of the things that I remember us just bringing up. However, the DM didn't see this as a big deal and started pressing that we should just deal with it and get on with our turns already. But then I recall in this argument, the DM said, they're orcs. Duh, this is what orcs do. But we players pointed out that you're in charge of the game and you decide what orcs do. And this is what you decided to go with. The DM finally shut down and just said, well, if you don't like it, feel free to leave my game, but good luck finding another DM that'll waste his time over your complaining asses. So everyone left the call. Us players talked in the private chat for a bit, apologizing to Lilia and telling her that not all DMs run games like that. She was just glad that everyone agreed that guy was terrible. I mean, she was just glad she got to quit before more orcs got to act and potentially touch her character. We went our separate ways after that. To end the story, I'd just like to say I really hope that DM got banned, or at least that nobody sticks around for any of his type of fantasy games. Look, if you want to make a game with ultra-violent, super evil orcs that are used only as a vehicle for you to describe vivid, I wish you luck in finding players that will want that too. And if you do find those players, that's great for you. But as we can see here, not everyone wants that. And, well, if you need to trick players into joining your game by virtue of omission, then maybe your game isn't really worth joining. You need to be upfront about the type of content that's in your game. I'm gonna be honest, labeling things as 18 plus is very, very vague. As the OP said at the beginning of the post, 18 plus can refer to any number of things, including just bad language. My games are 18 plus by virtue of that, but yeah, my games are not anywhere near close to this kind of crazy. We need to be specific about what kind of content is in our games. You don't need to write out a whole essay about it, but just a simple list in your Roll20 post or during session 0 is really important and could save you a lot of trouble. Though I trust that you guys are not running games like our problem dungeon master here. Alright, and that is going to be today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed it, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out my Q and Play series where I answer your questions in a rambly unscripted format while playing some video games. And while you're there in the cards, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment they all left to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.